recording sessions, very useful sessions as well to refer back to as we take this initiative forward. Great, so welcome everybody, and thanks to Mugove Walter for agreeing to present this time round. So I think we all know each other. So I think over to you, Walter.
Okay, thank you, John, and greetings, everyone. So I'm just trying to share the presentation. So in a moment, I should be able to. I hope the sharing is, you can see my screen?
Yes, it's there. You might want to start the slideshow. There you go. I can see you doing it. Great, well done. It's all working.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm going to be sharing with you an introduction to the integrated land use design methodology that we at Rescope and Scope programs have been developing and at the same time using over the last 3 decades or so. In the presentation, I will give you a description of ILUD and the background, just to check whether it's in presentation mode. Are you seeing the presentation in the slideshow mode?
No, not yet. You can click on that. Yeah.
Okay.
There it is. That's working.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, so I will look at also a bit of the background and the underlying principles and processes, and also the methodology in practice. And then we'll look at some of the achievements we have made in using this methodology, and then the challenges that we are facing, as well as the lessons that we have learned over the years. So ILUD is integrated land use design, which is a tool or an approach or a methodology developed by the Scope and Rescope network. It is a tool which is being used by school communities to move towards community resilience. So here we are talking about sustainable land use management, environmental education, combined with production of organic food. So we have the schools develop food forests which are multi-purpose and which are designed to achieve not only things like food sovereignty, but also empowering schools to deliver a better educational approach. So as we go along, we'll see how it is relevant to education among other goals. So this is a whole school approach to greening schools and to developing school gardens. I need to point out that this approach is very different from the conventional school gardens that we are familiar with. In terms of background, I think I can start off with the permaculture design course that Bill Mollison conducted in Botswana in 1987, which was attended by a number of people from the region. And the Zimbabweans among that group, including John Wilson, when they came back, they were inspired to start Fampidzanai Permaculture Center. And in 1989, St. Vincent School, just outside the capital, Harare, expressed interest to work with the permaculture people to explore the permaculture approach. And within 2 years, they had achieved significant progress, which made them brave enough to invite the then Minister of Education to attend an open day at the school. And when the children shared their story, including photos of the school before they started this journey, the minister was very impressed, and she asked the ministry to work with the permaculture people to start a program that could benefit more schools. So preparations were made so that in 1994, they were ready to launch a school's permaculture program, piloting in each of the 9 provinces at that time. And this program, after reviews, showed very exciting developments, and it eventually grew. And the people from the region, from neighboring countries who visited the program in Zimbabwe, got excited about this work. And in 2006, they gathered in Lusaka and decided that this work should be shared regionally. So in 2007, a regional program was started in Malawi, and this eventually led to the formation of a schools and colleges permaculture program in Kenya in February 2014. And in April 2014, a similar program started in Uganda. And in April 2016, sorry, there's a typo there, a similar program was launched in Zambia. And there is currently work to nurture similar country programs in Eswatini, in Ethiopia, and Tanzania. As you can see from the history, the development of ILUD was informed by largely permaculture, but also influenced by a number of other approaches that have developed. And this includes the holistic management approach, the eco-mapping, community mapping, which was pioneered in Ethiopia, the community dialogue approach that Sky is promoting, and also it has been shaped by experiences of eco-village development. Eco-village design education is one among other things that have shaped the development of ILUD that has been gradually evolving. So this approach, as mentioned, is focusing on school communities. And why schools is because schools are natural community centers. So every farmer is in a school catchment area. And the schools also have immediately available a significant amount of land, which can easily be used to demonstrate new ideas. If you go to a farmer and say, can you try out this new approach? The farmer will be very hesitant because they rely on farming for not only feeding the family, but also getting an income for paying school fees for children and other needs. So farmers are hesitant to try new ideas, but the land in and around schools is immediately available for trying new things because nobody really depends on it for food and such needs. Then also the schools are where the future is being shaped because the future belongs to the young generation. And also in schools, you find the children are very good learners. They are very receptive. They are very open-minded. So it's very much worthwhile to work with the schools. And in working with the schools, there are various entry points that we can use to start using ILUD in the schools. One of them is cellular teaching and learning using locally available resources. That's one of the things that benefits from the working with ILUD in schools. Also, the issue of water, sanitation, and hygiene is also a possible entry point. Ecological issues like a lot of the children in the schools in the region, they go to school without breakfast, so issues of hunger and malnutrition. So there are various issues that can be used as entry points into working with ILUD in schools. The underlying principles of this approach, which we also call the whole school approach, include inclusiveness. So you find that in many areas, schools have become islands in their community, where children just send they are just sent to school by the parents, and the parents are hardly involved in what is going on in the schools. So with ILUD, we are trying to reconnect schools with their communities. And then another important principle is that of genuine and wide participation, especially of the young people. We find that there are usually cultural barriers to get children involved in decision-making in what happens at their schools. So with ILUD, we are trying to cultivate genuine participation of especially the young people in what happens in and around their school. Then there is the socio-ecological principle of integration, which is also a key pillar in ILUD. This is about connecting things, making sure that there are relationships, linkages between various elements in and around the school environment. And then also the underlying processes that feature in the integrated land use design approach. One is intergenerational learning. So ILUD supports intergenerational learning through inviting schools to make use of the gray-haired libraries in the community. So getting the young and the elderly generation to interact and learn together and share. And also the issue of functional landscaping. This means needs-based landscaping. When we enter into schools, we find that the dominant approach is ornamental landscaping, where they are just interested in beautifying their school grounds. As part of functional landscaping, because food is a basic need, you end up having edible landscaping dominating the planting in and around the school. Then another underlying process is that of localizing and deepening ownership of this work within the school community. And it's important to point out that for us, a school is not complete without the community. So we always talk of school communities, not schools. So this is about school communities, because the parents and the community leadership are an integral part of the school. Then we also have the issue of resources-oriented approach is part of a key feature of ILUD. So we start from the premise that the community has resources. So we don't ask them, what do you need? We ask them, what do you have? And this is often a difficult question for the communities, because over the last 100 years, people have been coming in to ask them, what do you need? So they are very quick to answer that question. And this question of what do you need has resulted in the communities acquiring a poverty level. They think that they are very poor because they are always asked, what do you need? So if you ask them, what do you have? They get surprised because they are convinced that they have nothing. They are very, very poor. So this is the resources-oriented approach that we are bringing in. Integrated land use design is, as we said, a tool for facilitating the planning, implementation, and monitoring of improved land use in the school, community. And it is a step-by-step process which involves all the stakeholders and all the land that belongs to the school. So we don't have a particular corner of the school where a garden is developed. Instead, the school is taken as a unit of the environment, and every bit of land, from the main entrance to the toilets, to the sports grounds, to the school office, everything is redesigned as a unit of the environment, a whole unit of the environment. And the steps that we follow in ILUD are 5, and the first one is grounding. This is a very critical step in ILUD because it lays the foundation for everything that follows. So grounding means reconnecting the school community with 3 things: reconnecting them with nature, reconnecting them with their own culture, reconnecting them with their own history. And it might be surprising that school communities need this reconnection, but it is a basic need in many African communities, because there's been a lot of disconnections. So in terms of connection to nature, you find there are now children, especially in the urban areas, who just know that milk comes from the fridge, and they know nothing beyond that, the fridge in the supermarket. And in terms of culture, we have young people in Africa who think that it is a curse to be born African. So they try whatever they can to try to become somebody else. And to the extent that they bleach their skins, to the extent that when they look at traditional houses, they think that it's a sign of poverty. they need to have a building which has got, for example, asbestos roofs and other signs of the so-called modernity. And in terms of the story, it's also significant to note that when you ask young people in Zambia and Zimbabwe about the history of the Victoria Falls, they will tell you that the first person to see or discover the Victoria Falls was David Livingstone. So, and yet it is the forefathers of these children who took David Livingstone to go and show him the Victoria Falls. So this history that the young people are getting is not the story of their people. It is somebody else's story, which is being taught. So there is need for people to retell their own stories, their correct stories. So that's therefore necessary as we start the ILUD process, that we start by reconnecting the people with themselves, with who they truly are, their own story, their culture, and their connection to the environment. So that's what we call grounding. Then once they are clear or reconnected, we move on to the second step, which is to analyze the existing situation. So we now look at trying to develop a common understanding of the existing situation amongst the parents, the teachers, and the children. So these stakeholders, including the community leaders and some representatives of the local government authorities, they are represented in the workshop that will be using the integrated land use design approach. So here, this is where we ask the question, what do you have as you start your permaculture program? What do you have? And using various facilitation tools, we get the communities to realize that they have a lot of resources. And also, we look at the current challenges and how these challenges also evolved to become so important. Once they have this common understanding of the existing situation, we ask them to look ahead. All things being equal, after 30, 35 years, where do they want to see their school community being? So they describe the future that they want, and once they have this clear, they use the permaculture design skills to redesign their school in a participatory way, in an integrated way, so that they can start working towards their new vision. And once they have the new integrated design, land design, they then again put their heads together to come up with a work plan for implementing and monitoring the work towards their new vision. So this process takes about a week to go through with the school community. And after the process, there will be a few deliverables, such as a new landscape map of the school. There will be the work plan. There will be new or revised vision and mission statements for the school. So some of these will be the outcomes of the ILUD process. And in our implementing ILUD, we have also incorporated the principles focused evaluation. So we have developed a set of 8 principles that guide us in implementing ILUD, and these are also shared with the schools and the organizations that are working with the schools in order to guide the work. And also we use this as a tool to assess progress as the schools implement their new design. Now, as a result of putting this ILUD into practice, we've seen quite impressive transformation of landscapes, school grounds in this case. So we have seen bare grounds being turned into food forests within a fairly short period of time. So within 2 years, you start seeing very significant transformation of the land. Also, we have observed the significant transformation of minds and attitudes as a result of schools working with the ILUD approach. We have also seen some integration across the curricula, firstly at school level, and secondly, sometimes at national level, like in Zimbabwe. The primary school curriculum has incorporated elements of or principles of ILUD, and we have also within our network received 3 UNESCO awards for education for sustainability. The first one was given to one of our schools in Malawi, on the shores of Lake Malawi. The second one was given to one of our schools near Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. It's called the Sihlengeni Primary School. We recently had the similar award being given to schools and colleges, Permaculture Zimbabwe, for their work in the implementation of ILUD. And I need to point out that UNESCO is now very interested in ILUD because they've been promoting education for sustainability, but they didn't have the right tools to promote this. So now they are developing an interest in ILUD. So that's a very significant development for us. Just some pictorial illustrations. This is a school in Malawi. Before we worked with it, that's what it was on as shown on the left side there. And then after 17 months, the same school was transformed into what you can see on the right. So, and this is on a zero budget because communities have all those seeds that have been planted at the school, and the work done was done by the parents, the teachers, the children, and and they make their own fertilizers and other inputs that are required to develop these landscapes. And this is a school in Zimbabwe, which used to sweep the area you can see in the picture. Conventionally, when we start working with the schools, we find that every morning children are asked to sweep the bare land, and before they start school, and you have a cloud of dust enveloping the school. But as a result of ILUD, that bare land is turned into a food forest. So this land is just in the middle of the school area, and the classrooms are just nearby, but you can't see them because of the food forest. And you can see that for these children, fruits are not something that they look at twice. Actually, in the mid-2000s, this school had an open day where a number of people from the community, from neighboring schools and other visitors came, and when the school was showing us around, they said, if you see any ripe fruit, enjoy yourself. And that crowd could not finish the guavas that were ripe at that time. And this was a time when food security was highly compromised in the country. So it's really possible to have abundance. So as a result of ILUD, teachers no longer punish children for stealing fruits because they can no longer notice that a fruit is missing because there's so much if you work with a food forest. This on the left is a school in Uganda. On the right is a school in Zambia. Right in front of the school, you can see a trellising there using a granadilla or passion fruit, which is multi-purpose. Apart from the fruits, the granadilla is also blocking excessive sun, so providing shade to the classroom, and that's all part of the designs. Finally, just another illustration of the change on the school grounds as a result of implementation of the ILUD process. Like everything, there are challenges, and for us, the greatest challenge is that of the negative attitudes of adults. Children have no problem, but it's the head teachers, the teachers, the education authorities. We have had many instances when we have tried to implement ILUD, and the school gets a new head teacher who comes to say that a food forest is dirty and it needs to be removed so that the school can look neat, smart. This is the greatest challenge that we face in terms of ILUD. Then, coupled to that is the development paradigm, this industrial model of development, which is in people's minds. And another challenge is the initial protection of planted areas from livestock, and also limited knowledge of indigenous plants. So these are minor challenges, but the biggest one is that of the mindsets of adults. And what we've learned is that through inclusive planning and implementation, it's possible to overcome some of these challenges when people understand what is happening, and also when they begin to enjoy the fruits of ILUD work, then we find that some of the attitudes begin to soften and change. And we have also learned of the importance of starting small always, but then growing organically, and also the importance of focus on the practice rather than the theory, and using a low external input approach to reduce dependency on what is coming outside. And this allows for creative use of local resources. And we have seen that walking the talk is very crucial in making this work. Thank you very much, and hope I have left enough time for a discussion so that I can tell you more of what you want to hear rather than what you want to hear from me. Thank you very much. Over to you, John.
Great, thanks so much, Walter. That really, it's fantastic. So clear and full, and even those who are going to hear the recording are going to get a very good overview. So I think we just got just over 15 minutes or so, which is great to raise any questions you might have, or any reflections, any comments. I mean, we're looking at, I think it's really interesting to me. I'm sort of thinking that training for transformation, how could that enrich certain aspects of this, and vice versa? And what we heard from Simon a month ago, where are the linkages, that kind of thing. So let's just open it up, and there's a hand has shot into Twamba's window. Go ahead, Twamba.
Thank you very much, John, for the opportunity given to me to ask my question. Thank you, Walter, for the brilliant presentation and for all the hard work you have been doing, developing in your areas. It was fantastic for me to hear all this and rational. My question is about the availability of teachers and the children, because in our area, we try to implement certain things different from what you are implementing, not about agriculture, but usually they say the schedule is already full. They cannot spare time for some work aside what they already do in classes. So how do you manage to get to save time to do this? Or is other people who develop, who do the work? Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Twamba. Very critical question. It's a question of motivation. That's really at the heart of that question. So it's important that the participants, the teachers, and whoever is participating gets enough motivation, because there's a question related to that of school holidays. So what we found important is to get the teachers motivated. So if they find this benefiting them, they will do whatever it takes to do it. So the motivation comes in enjoying the benefits, the program. So the benefits, like within a few months, they start harvesting food that the family enjoys, and it starts impacting on their family budget, on their family health, and they find the information that they get from participating in ILUD is very empowering. So that motivation keeps this program going. So that's really what is important. Where there's a will, there's a way. When they are motivated, they will find time for this. So it's important to make sure that the participants get some real benefits. They are motivated to do this. When they say they have no time, it's just an excuse. But if they are well motivated, they will make things happen. That's briefly what I can say about that issue.
Yeah, I visited a school in Uganda not so long ago, and the motivation was incredible. I mean, there was a slope on it, and they had this thing that, because it was quite a wet part of Uganda, gets a lot of rain, and they really worked incredibly hard to catch all that water. And then they had the way they did it, and I guess each school does it differently, but when it came, they did the overall design, but then they gave each classroom an area to manage, and there was a sort of friendly competition between the classrooms to grow. But they were just so motivated by what they were doing. So somehow lighting that fire. But a good question. I know it's often difficult, these things. Philip, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Walter. That was terrific presentation. And I've been teaching holistic science in England for 15 years. And this need to transform education in itself is a huge field, because how do you go from knowledge as something that you passively learn to this practice where you're involved, whatever you're doing? It has many implications, not just to farming, but to health, psychology, how we run organizations. And so it's kind of a question in itself. How do you transform education? And I was interested, what was the beginning? Did this whole thing begin with permaculture and then go to education? Or was there a kind of an understanding you needed to educate people in order to promote permaculture and other holistic methods?
Yeah, thank you, Philip. It's a big question, and but very, very important, because the education system has remained the elephant in the room, because a lot of the challenges we are facing because the education system has remained largely theoretical, academic, examination-oriented, teacher-centered, classroom-centered. So that there are many ills with the education system. And two things. One, in terms of this particular experience, there is a realization in the schools. So the schools that's got this rolling, the school that I mentioned, St. Vincent School, they realize that the problems that they are facing as a school, they are not being addressed by the current education approach. So the school had reached out to permaculture people to get help to solve some of the problems. And also, on the other hand, those people who got introduced to permaculture realized that there is immense potential in using permaculture to help transform the education system. So it's from both ends that started. And also, I think that this raises the question of how do we influence the education system, the policies, the curriculum. And what we have realized over the years is that the best thing is to work with interested schools. And even though this might not be in the curriculum, using that interest, they can transform their own educational experiences. And once they achieve that, then they can invite the policymakers. And once policymakers come and talk to young children, they are the best ambassadors for educational changes. Policymakers, once they are told by children how they are benefiting from this practical oriented approach, then the policymakers will listen. They don't listen to civil society organizations and NGOs, but they can listen to young children. They can also listen to parents. So this, we believe, is the best way to advocating for educational change. And before I hand over back to John, I just want to add something on the question by Swamba, that on motivation for the teachers. The other important thing to say is that for teachers not to say that this is additional work, we don't have time. We use what we call a cross-curricular integration approach. So we don't get schools to have a new subject called permaculture or ILUD or whatever. We just encourage schools to integrate the principles of ILUD across the curriculum, across all subjects. So this is not promoted as an agriculture program. It's not promoted as a new subject. So we have some of our mathematics teachers are ILUD champions. Some of the history teachers are ILUD champions. Some of the language teachers are ILUD champions. So we just integrate across the existing curriculum, so that we don't have this impression that this is a new burden for the school, a new subject for the school. an additional workload for the school. It's just improving how they are currently delivering on the existing subjects. Back to you, John.
Great, thanks, Walter. And hopefully with the UNESCO awards, maybe something can go there in terms of trying to get people. I mean, it's a slow, gradual thing, but I think a lot of groundwork's been done. And I think there are more and more people who also recognize there's something wrong with the education system. So, but change is slow. Fantastic, thank you. Simon, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, John, and congratulations, Mugove, for the presentation. I had written my question there, but I can just read it. It's very much about appreciation for the award for the UNESCO. I have a school, and I feel very inspired by this kind of work that also attract UNESCO. You even said that they also taking your approach, trying to also use your approach to develop their also approach. So that is something probably maybe you can just send some light, given that you have won 3 awards. I think it's something that I would really like to hear more from you. But also the other thing I was wondering, I haven't still interacted very much with the ILUD, but I was also wondering, when you build this school garden, how do you deal with the issue of playing ground? Because like here in Kenya, one of the requirements is that children should also participate in co-curricular activities like in games, like sports. So, and sometimes I find there is a lot of challenge also with the land in schools, where you find land is also very limited to even have land for playing ground. I don't know how you deal with that challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Quite a number of questions, but basically to answer a lot of these questions is that we use what we call a needs-based approach, to redesigning the school grounds. So we don't have a standard template of how schools can redesign their land. The school community look at their needs. So as you rightly say, school needs playing grounds, so the process, when you go through those steps, you end up with the school community determining based on their needs how they are going to redesign their school grounds. So it works by making sure that they first of all design based on what is existing, the elements that are there. So more often than not, you will have buildings, you will have a soccer ground, a netball ground. So these elements, schools are very clear that they need them for the recreation and whatever purposes. So all the needs, or the needs that are very important, are catered for in the design. So they set aside the areas for this that they need, the areas for the recreational facilities that they need. They set aside areas for access. So they make sure that one is able to move from the car park to the office, from the office to the ablution block, and to the soccer ground, football ground. So these needs are all integrated into the design. So it's not a question of just looking at planting everywhere. So it's a question of balancing the needs and taking care of the needs. So the land that remains after taking care of some of these needs that I've outlined is the one that is then used for developing food forests. But also I need to highlight to you that in permaculture, people try to make maximum use of limited land. So for example, the school boundary is itself a production area. So the school boundary is not just there for marking the boundary, but they harvest from the school boundary. So along the boundary, they plant different species, at least 3 different species of plants, which are all multi-functional or multi-purpose, so that they can harvest from these plants, which also double up as a protection for the school land and marking the boundary for the school. And also, just to also let you know that production using permaculture design begins from the doorstep. So normally you find schools have flower beds around the classrooms. So these flower beds become the first production areas. So you mentioned towards the end of your question that the schools sometimes have limited land. So in this approach, we design with what is available. So no land is too small or too big. So we design with what is available. So we always say that the productivity of a permaculture design is only limited by the creativity of the designer. The productivity of a permaculture design is only limited by the creativity of the designer. So no land is too small for this. Then before I hand over back to you, John, I want to look at the question from Stephanie, which is in the chat. And she's asking if we have experience of working with other institutions like clinics and prisons. Yes, we do have experience of working with other institutions, especially our country chapter in Kenya has done a lot of work with prisons. Very successful work, so which has also led to the rehabilitation of inmates, as you have given there in your question. So the inmates have become very motivated, and when they get out of prison, they find that they get out with some valuable skills which make their acceptability in the communities much more much easier, because they will be carrying with them some skills that they can use to improve their livelihoods. Not only that, but to contribute to broader community development. Yes, and the clinics, they promote nutrition, but usually they don't demonstrate this on their grounds. So we have engaged this party. I must hasten to say that it's not easy to work with these institutions. It's not easy because of the mindsets that I talked to you about. And but however, we feel that ILUD is a tool that can be used across institutions, and that is value and can be applied in many contexts within the community. It's very flexible tool that can be applied in many situations. Over to you back, John.
Great. So I think that brings us to the, there was one question from Doug saying, the practices taken back to parents. Have you had experiences of practices? I'm sure you can answer that quite quickly with a big yes.
Yeah, sorry, John.
Yes.
Just as a quick follow-up to that, which Doug said, I wanted to check in if they've built like a bridge, if some of the teachers move out, like how does this remain. I don't know if that question makes sense, like the bridge between the school and the actual people in the community. So I think it really links with what Doug asked.
Okay.
And if I could
Yes.
just add, Mugove, sorry, I added another question, I suppose, which more my real question was the possibilities of this being a springboard into more community-wide agroecology. Have you had any indications of how possible that is?
Thank you very much, Precious and Doug, for the related questions. So yes, we try to aim at getting this influencing the broader community and having this being practiced in the community. And so this is always a goal that we have. But I need to say that it's not easy, or it hasn't been easy, and it hasn't been yielding good enough results to satisfy us. So it has been challenging. But I need to say that it's possible, and it's something that takes long. So one way we have seen is that the children themselves are carriers of these messages to the community. We have seen visited children who have started their own small ILUD gardens in the family garden, where they practice what they have learned from the school, and they start actually teaching the parents about this. But also very important is that we always involve parents when we are working within the school, so that they can become more confident to go and try out this approach on their own farms. So that's also one avenue. And then the other avenue is that some of the children we worked with in the 90s and the early 2000s, they are now heads of households, and so they are practicing what they learned. So all these are avenues of making sure that this reaches out to the community, and it reaches out to the community. It's a process. It's a long process, this one of making sure that there is community-wide uptake of what we are doing. Very slow, long-term sort of process, but it is happening. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Walter. And I think that'll bring us to the end of this session. I think a couple of comments in the chat summarize it. Crystal clear and very inspiring from both Stephanie and Precious. And I think, I mean, you raised how it's tough. How do we change mindsets? It keeps coming back to that issue of how do we really change those mindsets? What can trigger that? And I think that's what this kind of bringing together the different experiences, different methodologies, practices, all this experience between this group and those who are part of this group and who couldn't make it today, I think is something that I think we can really take forward. And I really believe if we really put our heads together, really put our experience together, I think we can strengthen and explore those kinds of tough questions, which because it is, I think we all come up with how difficult it is to change, how clear the examples are, but still it's difficult. It's not changing. It's not happening as fast as we would like it to happen. Okay, great. Thanks so much. And there's, so Janoka's just put a little, I won't read it out. You can see it yourselves there in the chat. And looking at that whole, how maybe, because you were talking about how can these different approaches strengthen each other the other day, Walter, and we can, she's sort of thinking there and presenting some ideas of how the training for transformation might be able to come in and strengthen that. Great. Okay, but we'll continue exploring those possibilities. as we said, this is the first stage was to share these different approaches, get to know them, and then we're still looking to 2024 to make some time to really come together as a group and really put our heads together and in person really explore how we can strengthen all of this work. Excellent, thank you very much. So I think we'll aim for, because the first week of February is not so great, we'll aim for February the 9th for the next session, and that'll be Precious will be sharing on holistic management and how she's been working with it with communities. So I think that'll be really interesting. So yeah, but urge you to keep thinking, and we'll keep taking this initiative forward. Doug and I have been talking about the proposal and working on that some more, and producing maybe a 2-pager, and starting to think about who might support a coming together of this group next year in 2024. So this is our last meeting today, this year, for the year. So wishing you all a good break, and we'll keep going in next year, and hopefully lots will happen next year. And we can really learn from each other and take things forward. So thanks so much. And thank you very, very much, Walter, for today and the presentation. Stay well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Merry